Choosing colors is my favorite part of any embroidery project. And of course the color comes from the thread you use. I like to use embroidery floss because it comes in multiple strands and you can decide how thick or how thin you want your stitches to be. You can use pearl cotton, crewel thread, yarn, however, any kind of material that you want. But like I said, embroidery floss is my favorite. It comes in tons of colors, metallics. It's really fun, and it makes choosing your colors for your project that much more exciting. When you get embroidery thread, it comes in skeins like this, which is nice at the beginning because these little bands hold it in place. There's a long end and it's made to just pull right out of the skein. But the more you use the thread, the looser the bands get. And then I find eventually my threads become a big tangled mess in my sewing box or wherever I store my threads. So what I've decided to do is I wrap my embroidery floss on clothespins. I write with just a ballpoint pen or a mechanical pencil the number of the color that I'm using so that I always know what color it is. And then I just wrap the entire skein around the clothespins. Even with the whole skein of thread wrapped on it, there's enough give that the end of your clothespin can open just enough to hold the end of it securely so your threads don't become unraveled. And I find that it's super easy and convenient when I'm trying to gather up threads for a project. It's easy to test the colors together. It also makes them super portable so that they don't become tangled as I'm traveling from place to place with my projects. I like the look of it so much that I actually made this board to go in my craft room. There's a tutorial on my blog for it of boards and little nails to store all of my clothespins. It makes it a bright, colorful accent to my craft room. It's easy for me to see all the colors I have and also to see what colors I might want to replace. Now that we have chosen our floss colors, and these floss colors for our sampler are listed individually in your pattern so you can get these specific colors and know exactly which ones to get. And I'm going to show you now how to separate the threads. There's the sampler that we're doing, we go back and forth between all 6 threads, and sometimes we only use 3 threads. And when I first started embroidery, I didn't realize that there was kind of a method or a technique to separating threads. So I would just grab one and I'd pull them apart like this. And by the time it got to the end, they'd be all wrapped up and tangled and it would make a big mess. And by the time I got to my 2nd or 3rd strand, it was a hopeless knot and I had to throw the rest of it away. So I'm going to share with you this little technique and trick that I've learned to separate my threads. So the first thing that you want to do is cut your length of thread. I like to work with lengths of thread that are about the length of my arm. If you get more comfortable with it, you can go a little bit longer, but as you're stitching, you'll find that there's tension created and rotation in your threads, and it tends to wrap up on itself and create knots in your project. And so it's easier to just work with a smaller piece of thread, go back, rethread to get more of the color that you need to work on. Once you have your piece cut, you're going to take and separate just at one end one of the strands of the thread. Then you're going to gently pinch your entire piece of floss in between your forefinger and your thumb, and you're going to pull just one strand all the way out. And you'll see that under here it's gathering into a loop as we're undoing the raveling that created that one, the whole strand. So now you have one, and I'm going to set it aside. Before I go on to pull out my next strand, I'm going to straighten this back out and get rid of all of the tangles and loops. Then you just pull your next single strand, pull it all the way out, and again, it's all twisted up, and then I'll pull it straight before I pull out the next one. Now, one thing I like to do with each of my strands after I've pulled it out is just kind of hold it to the side, let it unspin. These have all been spun together to create the strand of floss. So you want to get out as much of that movement and twisting as you can. It'll help your threads lay flatter as you're going to stitch. The next thing that I want to show you really quick is how to use a needle threader. These are not necessary, but very, very helpful. So if you can get your hands on one, you will love it. Really quick while I'm holding these needles, when you purchase embroidery needles, they'll come in different sizes. You want to get the size of the sizes of the needles refer to the eye of your needle and also to the thickness of your needle. So the smaller ones are going to have smaller eyes, the larger ones are going to have larger eyes. If you're using the 6 full threads of your floss, you're going to want to make sure that you're grabbing a needle with a large enough eye to hold all of that floss in it. Once you have picked your needle, you're going to take this wire end of your needle threader and you're going to slide it through the eye of your needle. And then you're going to let go. You're going to grab your floss. You're going to put it inside this loop, the wire loop, and then you're just going to gently pull it through the eye of your needle. When you're doing 6 full strands, you're actually pulling 12 pieces of thread through the eye of this needle. So you'll want to tug it a little bit gently, be a little bit patient as you work all those threads through so that you don't cut any of your threads with the wire of your needle threader as you're doing it. Once you have the color on your thread, then you're ready to get started stitching. So let's go and learn how to do the heavy chain stitch.